I mean, for a layman, the question would be, what is this all about? Can you start on that note?
Well, thank you very much, Rabi. Part of your introduction actually landed us where we want to be. That is our genes. You know, how we look, how our bodies, various body parts are formed is dependent on the genes that we inherit from both parents. That is, when a man and a woman meet, then you form an individual. And the gene template is the information template that is actually translated, that form the eyes, form the mouth, form the head, the various parts. But let's be very simple in this, in handling this topic. Epigenetics. What do you mean by epigenetics? Let me explain the word and how it all came about. Epi means above. Genetics means the genetics composition of the body that I have just described. Just like you said rightly, the gene sequence cannot, be changed, but it can be modified by environmental and other lifestyle, factors. Now, it is very common we ask the question, how is it that two identical twins are drastically, different in the way they may behave? Because if we go by the concept of gene inheritance, both of them had the same genes from the same man or woman that that brought them together. Another question will be, is it possible or how true it is that my mother or father was diabetic, and then because I inherited the genes, I'm going to be also diabetic, I'm going to be also hypertensive? Science and medical science.
Just to add to what you just said, for instance, for people whose parents had died of cancer, maybe breast cancer, we're being told that, for instance, if one's mother dies of breast cancer, there's this tendency that the daughters, the sisters, the daughters of that woman, could come down with breast cancer too. They will say that it's hereditary or because of the genes. Is it the same line of thought?
Oh, the answer is actually no. And this is where what has driven science into the field of epigenetics. Let's have a very clear understanding. 75% of the inherited genes are described as non-expressive. They are dormant. They cannot be expressed. They are just inherited. Only 25% of the genes that can be expressed, that you would see that yes, because your mother had this, you inherited this 100% genes, 75 are non-dominant, 25 are the dominant that can be expressed. Even the 25%, and I'm talking this in context of the question you've answered. The fact that I inherited those genes from my mother or father, am I also going to be cancer? Am I going to have cancer or diabetes? The answer is most likely, very likely no. Because the expression of these genes is actually affected by environmental or what you call lifestyle. They are actually what you call the triggers of these genes. Take, for example, in case of the breast cancer, the genes that is known to cause the breast cancer is what they call the BRCA1 and BRCA2 genes. The fact that you had this BRCA1 and BRCA2 genes, the lady had this, it does not mean that she may necessarily express these genes. However, her lifestyle and the environment cannot push her to expressing those genes. So that idea has been actually debunked in modern science. That cancer is not, genetics. If you want to know, 5%, only 5% of causes of cancer are linked to, genetic expression. The rest of the factors that actually make one to come down with, cancer, they're the environmental, factors. I mean, lifestyles.
Okay.
So, to answer your question, that has been debunked. And the clear answer came out of what you call the genome study that was launched by President Clinton in 1990, where over 25,000 genes of the human body were clearly mapped up. And they say that the genes can only be triggered to express mostly by environmental or lifestyle factors.
Wow, since we've been able to establish this now, I think I now understand why in some families you have a situation whereby maybe either the father or the mother died of one ailment, maybe cancer, diabetes, or the likes, and you see some coming down with it and some never come down with it. So what you've just explained points to the fact that lifestyle and environment, are those triggers, are those triggers for such. Because it means if you're not affected by these two, it's very likely that whether your father or mother had died of a particular disease, it's not very likely that you die of same disease. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, Rabbit, there's a caveat in this, and let me go ahead and then explain it. More than often, where you see that the mother had cancer or diabetes, and the daughter also or son also came down with diabetes, is because both of them had cohabitated under the same environmental factors, especially lifestyle. They were eating the same type of diet, the same, if, especially in some houses, if the father or the mother are the ones that were sleeping late, the children will also grow up to be sleeping, late. So these environmental factors or lifestyle has actually been passed on to them. And it is the lifestyle that actually triggers the expression of these genes. Remember, only 25% of the genes are actually, expressed.
Okay, so now that we've been able to, establish this, let's look at how nature, because, if we look at the topic, nature and nurture, as we talk about epigenetics, explain these two variables, nature and nurture.
Simply put, nature, that is one's genetic, makeup. The fact that I inherited these genes from my parents, you have those genes inherently in you. As I said, these genes may not, be expressed. But if the lifestyle, which is what we refer to as, nature or the environment, forces these genes to be, expressed, then that is why you have nature. Nature simply referring to the genetic, composition of an individual, while nurture simply means lifestyle or environmental, factors that affects the expression of the genes.
Okay, so what do we do to make sure that those genes remain dormant and don't get triggered, thereby predisposing us to those ailments that we probably wouldn't have wished for?
Very good question, and that's why the emphasis these days in educating people or even managing diseases is on lifestyle factors. And what do you mean by lifestyle? Take, for example, somebody who is excessively under stress. And I would like to emphasize stress. Stress now forces, stress is considered as a risk factor that encourages the expression of, the genes that we manifest in form of, disease. So Obviously, it stands to reason that you try to avoid the stress. And even where you cannot avoid the stress, you have to manage the stress very well so that the stress does not force the expression of disease-causing genes. That is one example. Sleep. Sleep is so important, Rabbi, that if you know the importance of sleep in our health, it's more than our bank account. But most of us don't know about this, and I think this is why I commend the efforts of NTA for programs, educational programs like this. Lack of sleep or inadequate sleep has been shown and associated with many diseases as triggering or triggers or risk factors. Diabetes is one, cancer is another, hypertension is another. I've already mentioned, stress. You also look at dietary, composition. When you eat or when you take a balanced diet, and these days we don't just talk about a balanced diet, we talk about adequate diet. And the adequate diet is that diet which you eat and it is able to be digested and assimilated and transported to the cells so that it can be used, appropriately. So diet is another factor that it is also very important. So you have to eat the right diet. The other factors require things like a sedentary, living. This is what we talk about physical exercise. Lack of physical exercise or routine exercise will predispose us to some of these, diseases like diabetes and then hypertension and then others. Another thing that it is also very important is what we call emotional stability. In these days, you look at disease in terms of, emotion. You look at disease in terms of spirituality. You look at disease in terms of, where balance. It is really very important. And that's why we emphasize that for us to be disease-free or to live a quality life, we should avoid toxic and emotional relationships. Abusive relationship. These are some of the factors that can actually also trigger the expression of disease-causing, genes. That's why when you are some of these people who are in abusive relationship, some of them they become, they developed, obesity. They will be depressed. There is, depression. Then there is obesity. This is weight gain. And there are several other, factors. Even the way you relate with your colleagues. If you don't relate, very well with your colleague, it constitutes what you call, emotional, trauma. You are at work, you are not relating very well. It also causes psychological stress. All factors that may predispose to expression of wrong genes or genes that will cause, disease. Normally, these genes will be inactive. They will not be expressed at all. Take, for example, the case of, cancer. The cancer-causing genes have what you call, there are also cancer suppressor genes. They suppress the expression of, the cancer genes. However, if you're under so much stress, you're not eating well, you are not sleeping well, it triggers the expression of these cancer-causing genes, or it suppresses the efficiency of the suppressor or the cancer suppressor genes. And the cancer is easily, expressed.
Okay, as a neurotoxicologist, I want you to take us through, at what point or how an individual could begin to, realize that his stress level, is at a point that could become destructive to him or to his health.
Well, we say the best doctor is yourself. And that's why you have to monitor your body very well. You can see that you are somebody, maybe before you took on to this job, you were calm, you weren't somebody that will become easily irritated. However, if you are under stress, you will notice that drift in your own personality. The moment you start noticing that drift in your personality, even sometimes somebody says good morning to you, it becomes, offensive. You got to know that something is, going wrong. So you must take the appropriate, steps. Then another example is that of lack of, sleep. When you don't have adequate sleep, you come to work, you see that you cannot concentrate. You cannot even focus. You cannot communicate very well. The moment you start seeing these deviances in your life, you know that something is going wrong. Plus, need for medical checkups will really help and take you to the right, phase. And that's why each and every one of us should be able to subject themselves to annual medical checkup so that these derangements can be detected at an early age. As I always say, disease is a process. It's like going from here to Lagos. Take, for example, Abuja is a set point. The time you start moving, you go to Lokoja, you get to Ibadan. Where did we meet you, or where did your doctor meet you in this process? Were you just in Lokoja? It's easier for him to bring you back. Or is it you've gone down to Ibadan, it takes more time and then efforts to bring you back. Right, let us not forget our topic for discussion today. That is nature and nature. I want to give some graphic examples so that people can understand the role that nurture plays even on nature. Remember, I had said that nature, you are looking at the genetic composition and how these genes are expressed, determined by your nurture, which is the environmental factors. Then, for example, I had, somebody I knew very well were growing up as, kids. Because he was in this environment, this young man had to sit for GCE over 6 times. Here he was not, passing. Somehow he had the opportunity to go to the United States and to go to school. There again, despite what you may perceive as his nature, the genes that he inherited, poor genes or non-intelligent genes to pass his own genes.
Of a dullard.
What?
Or a dullard.
Now you're talking. Now when he got to the United States, the environmental factors now triggered him. He became a different person. This guy studied and made it up to PhD level, and he is now a professor. So you can see that by the nature, that is his composition that was expressed here, he was still being inhibited by the nurture. Now when he got to a different environment, with different lifestyle, different sentiment, the way things are doing, he became a first-class, student. So this is it. Then another example that you can also think about, why is it that people are compulsively aggressive? People who are in a bad, relationship. It doesn't mean that that is how they are formed initially, but that relationship, how he's relating with the husband or even the children or even, forces him to display and manifest a different personality. Another thing you see that he starts or she starts gaining weight. He becomes, obese. So nature and versus nature is really very important, and this had triggered a lot of questions, and this is what led to a new field of study that we are now discussing and calling epigenetics. Epigenetics today is one of those areas of research where there is so much money. For those of you who are grant writers, if you can write a proposal on this thing, how you're going to do studies on epigenetics, you would easily be founded.
Okay, so as we round up, just give us your final shot on the topic. Yeah, round it up.
Well, the take-home message is this. As humans, we inherit genes from our parents. That is mother and father. That's why you say, oh, he looks like his father. He looks at his, mother.
Yeah.
But the expression of these genes depends on environmental factors, especially in the context of disease. Let me use this as an example. Gone are the days when we are told that nobody knows the cause of cancer. Today, they've come to know that 90 to 95% causes of cancer are due to environmental factors. These are the trigger factors that will trigger the expression of those cancer genes. So, please, let us all be guided by this. Things like taking care of ourselves. That is what I call, how do you actually build health around yourself? Making sure you sleep very, very well, you take the, the right, diet, engage in, exercise,
physical
activities, indulge in the use of what we call probiotics that stimulate your microbiome that is responsible for your immune system, and maintain healthy and spiritual relationship. And for people who are known to be really calm, you see them, they rarely suffer from conditions like, hypertension. Yeah. They are very, very calm. Nothing worries them. When you continue to hype yourself all around, that is where your blood pressure may spike up.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. John Tor-Agbidye, for your insights. I'm sure a lot of people have a lot to gain from your expose on this episode. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, Rabia.